Hello, everyone. How have you been? Okay, so today is day 26. So, welcome, and I'm really glad all of you here today. So, I know over the last few weeks, we have spoken about a lot of important topics regarding emotional suppression, then nervous system survival patterns, then multiple reasons for burnout, emotional exhaustion, confusion related to identity, then what kind of conditioning people get into, what it truly means to reconnect with yourself. And again, today's conversation goes even deeper. So are we all ready with that? Okay, so let us start with, I want to bring here that when we come across people who are struggling, every time it's not struggle due to lack of success. Yes, you heard it right. Yes, they are struggling because success did not give them the emotional fulfillment they expected it would. All right. And this is becoming one of the most silent emotional experiences of modern life. People are achieving a lot, performing, growing professionally, winning externally, yet internally, many still feel that emotional emptiness. And today we are going to understand why. All right. So you all who all have come in, please settle in. You can put the put all the works aside, whatever if at all it is possible. Be in a space where you're not disturbed for around next 40 to 45 minutes, because as we are started week 4, the sessions are little more intense. So I want to touch base upon more of the researches, more of the understanding, what I have learned. And no achievements are required for you to be here. So today we are going to talk about why achievement might be part of what's been quietly exhausting you. With this, let me hear from you. You have done everything right, and maybe still why it doesn't feel enough, or if this is something that relates with you, maybe you can leave it here. I want to drop in that message that relates with you, because I want to describe a specific experience. You worked towards something for a long time, like a promotion, degree, target, relationship milestone, still a number in your account, something we all look for, right? That okay, this much I should have, a title after your name, and you got it. Senior manager, senior VP, then director, anything. And there was a moment, maybe an afternoon, maybe a week, where it felt good, where you allowed yourself to feel it. And then quietly, without announcement, the feeling left. And you looked at the thing you had worked so hard for. So let me tell you, because many might say this, that oh, I mean, it's absolutely fine. Why somebody will bother when they get into a level which they have worked so hard for? that title we have been aiming for to receive in corporate, or say the result, the achievements that probably a teenager or somebody will look for. And these all are there, undeniably yours. Those all are yours. Yet it felt like nothing for some. Not disappointment, not some kind of failing to achieve something or grateful for something, just a blankness where satisfaction was supposed to be after working so hard and achieving something, isn't it? And the very next thought almost immediately was, what's the next thing? What do I need to achieve next to feel okay again? There was a time where even, you go through the ladders so fast, and you don't pause there. You just think of, like, what do I need to achieve next to feel okay again? You feel that whatever you have achieved so far probably is meaningless. It's not something you have done enough for yourself, and that slowly says to you that, okay, I'm not still yet whole. I don't have enough. I'm not enough. And if that is familiar, you are not ungrateful. You're not. And even you're not broken because you are successful. You are not someone who needs to want less. Definitely nobody wants to, compromise here as well. You are someone who has been using achievement to meet a need that achievement was never designed to meet. Does this line hits you hard? Because we often achieve something which is not actually meant for us. Definitely, with the capabilities, we do achieve that. However, that doesn't meet your need. And today, I'm going to explain exactly what that need is and why no achievement, no title, no trophy, no numbers in your bank account, no external validation will ever fully meet it. And what will? So tell me in the comments, what is the one thing you achieved that you thought would finally make you feel, enough? What is that one thing you achieved that you thought would finally make you feel enough? Not a single as of now, is it? And if that's the case, we'll go deeper here. And for those of you who are joining me for the first time, I'm Ishita Bagchi. I'm a life coach specializing in emotional intelligence, a counseling psychologist, a DMIT counselor, and I also work with healing practices like pranic, Reiki, and crystal. And my work really focuses on this very gap, the gap between the life that looks successful from the outside and probably the life that feels meaningful from the inside. Yes. So there is a huge gap. I work almost exclusively with people who are impressive by every external measure and quietly starving for something they cannot name. Hence, since this uh, social media started, getting so much in everyone's life, that leads to Loads of confusion in many, like starts living life of someone else or um, want to live a life of someone else, which is probably not even meant for them. So that's the reason, because the truth is, emotional intelligence, real fulfillment, the ability to feel genuinely satisfied with your own life, none of that is a byproduct of achievement. It is a completely separate internal practice. And most high achievers have never been taught it because the world kept rewarding them for the other thing. But today we're going to change that. Day 26, week 4, we have dismantled a lot this week, right? We all agree to that? So, the myths about healing, about relationships, about the body, about the burnout, the most spoken word. Today, we dismantle the biggest myth of all, the one that runs most of the adult world, the belief that if you achieve enough, you will finally feel enough. And again, that is not some kind of an imperfection, that is a neurological misunderstanding. And today we correct it. So, I want to share something, a story that while composite reflects a pattern I have seen so consistently in high achieving children and adults, that it might as well be every second person in today who are joining here or somewhere. So let me explain you with this with a story here. Let's say there is a teenage boy, presume 13 to 15 years, national level chess champion for his age group, consistent school topper, some son of two highly educated, deeply loving parents who had provided him every advantage. His bedroom had a shelf of trophies that ran the full length of one wall. By every external measure, extraordinary. And yet, his parents sought help not because something had gone wrong, however, because of something he said one evening, very quietly, after winning his fifth national title. He looked at his mother and said, I don't know what I'm doing this for anymore. So, the researcher working with him described their first session like this. The boy sat, slight, precise, watchful, the composure of someone decades older. Like he never smiled unless someone smiled at him first. He mirrored, he didn't initiate. He was asked, when you won the last tournament, what did you feel in the moment they announced your name? He thought about it with a great seriousness. And then he said, a big relief, just relief that I hadn't lost. So I was surprised to hear because after winning, the common expectation is that someone will be say that I was overly joy, I was so happy, I was so much excited. Nothing, no joy, not pride, not the satisfaction of mastery. Relief that he hadn't failed. That one sentence, that relief that I hadn't lost, is the most honest description of high achiever emptiness I have ever encountered. And I want you to sit with it because many of you, if you're being completely honest, recognize that feeling in your own life. So probably this story I was able to narrate it because I recently was watching a series with my son. And in the series, there was the same. situation which was showing up, which was very much related to the topic we are talking about. That even after winning the chess championship, that didn't make him happy. So, when he was asked, when did you fall in love with chess? Something shifted in him. His face changed. Something younger came through. He said, when I was 6, my grandfather taught me. We used to play on Sunday mornings. He would make, you know, tea and I would set up the board. We would play for hours. He let me win sometimes, but however, not always. And when I beat him for real, genuinely, he looked at me like I was the most interesting person he had ever met. And that was the feeling, that Sunday morning feeling of being seen, of being important, of pure, uncomplicated connection. Chess was never about chess, it was about his grandfather's face. And somewhere along the way, as the competitions grew, as the trophies multiplied, as the pressure to perform compounded, the grandfather's face got replaced by judges' scorecard. So, connection got replaced by performance, fulfillment got replaced by achievement, and no number of national titles could give him back the Sunday morning feeling because they were never the same thing. They had never been the same thing. And what struck me most about this case and why I remembered it immediately when I was building today's session is how universal it is. Because this is not story about just a chess prodigy. This is a story about every person, mind it, every person who started something from love and watched it slowly become like an obligation. Every person who began something from out of joy, excitement, and ended up running from failure. And every person who achieved the thing and stood in front of it afterward, wondering why it felt like nothing at all. The research notes that after sustained work, not on his performance, however, on what chess had originally meant to him, on what he actually needed as a 13-year-old, or say, that boy, human being, something remarkable happened. He started playing chess with his father on Sunday afternoons. No stakes, no timings, no judges. And his mother, watching from the kitchen, said she heard something she hadn't heard in years. He laughed, genuinely freely laughed. He didn't win less. He just started playing from a completely different place, from connection instead of relief, from fulfillment instead of validation. And the trophies, the exact same trophies on the exact same shelf, started to mean something again. Not because of what they said about his worth, because of what they said about his joy of doing it. So, let me ask you something, and I want you to be honest in the comments. What did you originally do something for before it became something you had to be good at, before it became performance, before someone started measuring it? Does this remind you of something that you had or you were good at? I would like to put it in the chat now. And don't rush into any kind of analysis. Never do that. Don't judge yourself. Don't judge your words. Whatever big or small, yours is valid. Just think over it. And even if you're not comfortable sharing it, it's absolutely fine. But just recall that for now. Now, let us understand, as we always do, some core teaching. So, what is the science of achievement and emptiness here? So, there are three pillars which we are going to touch upon today. The first, that is the hedonic treadmill and dopamine adaptation, the neuroscience of extrinsic or intrinsic motivation, and the research on what fulfillment actually requires in the brain. Okay, so let us go this also part wise. Now, part one, that is the hedonic treadmill. So, why achievement always leaves you hungry? So, let me explain why the emptiness after achievement is not personal. It is not ingratitude. It's not a sign that something is wrong with you. It is one of the most well documented phenomena in the entire field of neuropsychology. That is, in 1971, psychologist Philip Brickman and Donald Campbell described what they called the hedonic treadmill, the brain's tendency to return to relatively stable baseline level of emotional well-being. It is regardless of positive or negative life changes. So their landmark 1978 study compared lottery winners and paralysis victims and found that within 1 year, both groups had returned to approximately the same baseline happiness as before their life changing event. So that means, so, and also let us talk about this. Like, we are comparing the lottery winner and a paralysis victim, just imagine. And they are giving that 1 year timeline, which they are, approximately returning to the same baseline happiness as before their life changing event. So, one event was something, drastically, which somebody would be looking for that amount in their bank account, and other is something like tragic, that is a paralysis, right? Now, subsequent research by Dr. Sonja at UC Riverside confirmed that approximately 50% of our subjective well-being is determined by a genetically set point, 10% by life circumstances including achievements, and 40% by intentional activity. So, the neurological mechanism is dopamine adaptation. So, when you achieve a goal, your brain releases a burst of dopamine and rapidly recalibrates its baseline, requiring a larger or, say, new achievement to produce the same response. The result is the achievemental treadmill, running faster and faster to feel the same thing. This is exactly what happened to that boy. Each new title produced a shorter and shorter windows of satisfaction. His dopamine system had adapted. The baseline had moved, and the next achievement had to be bigger, more prestigious, more definitive, just to produce the same brief relief. And here is the most important thing I need you to hear about this. The treadmill never stops on its own. There is no achievement level at which the brain finally says, this is enough and you can stop now. Does it? So, because the brain was never designed to find permanent satisfaction through external achievements. It was never designed to do that. It was designed to keep seeking. Seeking is the survival mechanism, arrival is not. So, the feeling of never enough is not an imperfection in your character, it is a feature of your neurology. The problem is not that you want too much. The problem is that you have been looking for something your brain cannot find through achievement alone, and nobody told you about it. Now, let's go to part two, extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, two completely different neural pathways. So, here is a distinction that changes everything. And that is one that most high achievers have never been taught. Because the education system currently, or say the corporate world and the social approval machine, all run entirely on the wrong one. Now, there is another research that is called self determination theory by Deci and Ryan. So, psychologists Edward Deci and Richard Ryan developed this self determination theory, one of the most empirically validated frameworks in the motivational psychology. The decades of research across cultures and age groups demonstrates that human beings have two fundamentally distinct motivational systems with different neural substrates and profoundly different effects on their well-being. Extrinsic motivation, that is pursuing goals for external rewards uh, that you achieve, or say kind of an approval that you would love from the social society here, the status symbol, validation, or the avoidance of shame, activates the brain's threat and reward system. It produces achievement and is correlated with anxiety, emptiness, and identity fragility. Whereas intrinsic motivation, that is pursuing goals for inherent interest. That's why in my sessions, I often talk about identifying your purpose, your goal that connects with your inner self. And we all have certain, uh, you know, natural traits which actually connects to ourselves. So when I say this intrinsic motivation, that is pursuing that kind of goal for your internal interest, personal meaning, purpose, growth, connection, that activates the ventral striatum and medial prefrontal cortex, producing what researchers call, that is what is that called? That is eudaimonic well-being. So, so a felt sense of aliveness, purposefulness, and genuine satisfaction. And that can be done, it's not that difficult. That's the reason we always talk about, and I always talk about in the sessions, that it's always better that we figure out the purpose, which is aligned with our true self, that we are meant for, or what connects us with our inner self. So, the critical finding here is the external achievements pursued primarily for extrinsic reasons, and those reasons do not satisfy the intrinsic needs system. So, the brain's fulfillment circuitry operates on entirely different kind of fuel. So, as we talked about this case study, the story that I just shared, so this was just a created story. So as we saw, he was playing chess for extrinsic fuel, approval, rankings, the relief of not failing, when his nervous system was wired from the beginning for intrinsic fuel, connection, wonder, the joy of a beautiful move with someone he loved, right? And no amount of extrinsic achievement was ever going to fill that intrinsic need. It cannot. And the two systems require different things. The tragedy of most high achiever lives is that they have spent decades becoming exceptional at feeding the wrong system, getting better and better at the thing that leaves them emptier and emptier. Does this relates? Because achievement actually feeds the extrinsic system, as we just talked about, and fulfillment, completeness, internal alignment feeds the intrinsic one, and they are neurologically distinct. You cannot cross feed them. And a life that is your special life built entirely on external achievement, no matter how impressive, it will always leave the intrinsic system quietly starving. It will never fulfill that need. With this, part three, that is what fulfillment actually requires in the brain. So, what does fulfillment actually look like neurologically? What does the brain need in order to feel that genuinely satisfied, not just briefly rewarded? So, let us go deeper into another research that is from Dr. Martin Seligman, founder of positive psychology at the University of Pennsylvania, identified through longitudinal research spanning 40 countries that sustainable psychological flourishing requires five specific elements, none of which are those achievement, positive emotion, felt, not performed, engagement, genuine absorption in activity, relationship, that is that authentic connection, then meaning, that is contribution to something beyond that self, and accomplishment pursued for intrinsic rather than extrinsic. So these are five really important. Okay, so now as we understood this five, now what studies were done on 10,000 adults over 5 years found that individuals who reported the highest life satisfaction were not those with most achievements in their life. They were those with the highest scores on meaning, engagement, authentic connection. Accomplishment, when present, contributed to flourishing only when embedded in the other four elements. Achievement without meaning, without connection, without genuine engagement actively predicted lower well being than achieving less but more meaningfully. So, again, there is another research from the Washington University School of Medicine demonstrates that the brain's default mode network, the self-referential network that activates during rest, reflection, and identity processing, is critical for the experience of meaning. So, when the DMN is chronically suppressed, which occurs under condition of relentless goal pursuit, external focus, and the performance pressure, the brain loses access to its own meaning making apparatus. High achievers in continuous pursuit mode have measurably suppressed DMN activity. They are literally unable to access the neural circuitry through which meaning, identity, coherence, and intrinsic satisfaction are processed. That is, rest, reflection, and identity based work are not luxuries. They are the biological requirements for the experience of fulfillment. This is the answer to the question that most of you are here today. Why doesn't it feel like enough? Because enough is not a quantity that can be measured, it is not a milestone, it is not a number. Enough is a state, felt state. It comes from meaning, from genuine connection, from doing things that are actually yours and not the things that were assigned to you by other people's expectations. And it can only be found when you stop running long enough to let the part of your brain that processes those meaningful come back online, which requires something most high achievers have never been given permission to do. So stop, turn inward, look inside you. Ask not what you can achieve. However, what actually makes you feel alive again? That is the work needed, and that is the most important work you will ever do. So, with this, let us do a quick guided experience that is the fulfillment reflection practice. And today's practice is one that I recommend every single high achieving client. And I call it, another is called fulfillment audit. You can also say that, not a performance audit, not a productivity audit, a fulfillment audit. So, 5 questions. Grab something to write, maybe take a notepad or just open your phone to just write it down. These questions deserve your honest answers, and honest answers deserve paper. I always recommend you write it down instead of typing. Pen and paper connection, hands. There is a lot to do, and we can talk about it some other time because, again, it's a lengthy explanation. However, a pen and paper, when you write it down with your own hands, that gives a real connection. That again creates a neural connection. So, write it down. Question number one: what have you achieved in the last 3 years that you are most proud of? So, what we will do is you can write these questions one by one. Write all of them. Don't be modest. And now, whatever you have written, just next to each one of the achievement, write one word for how it feels to look at that achievement right now. Okay? So you have to write it down, the last 3 years achievement, and just say pointer one, two, three. And with all those achievements, write next. Just give a hyphen sign and then write that one word that you feel right now. Not something when you achieved it, but what it feels right now. Question number two. That is, why did you pursue each of those achievements? Be brutally honest to yourself. Was it because it genuinely excited you or because it proved something? To whom? That's another question. So, what you need to do is you just write it down. Why did you pursue each of those achievements? Okay. So you have to understand what was the fuel source to that achievement, because the fuel source determines the emotional outcome of every single time. So write it down again. Pointers 1, 2, 3. Okay. Why did you pursue each of those achievements? Okay. And for whom? All right. Clear? Question 3. When did you last feel genuinely fulfilled? Not proud, not relieved, yet deeply satisfied. Notice whether it was connected to an achievement at all or whether it was connected to something else entirely. A conversation, a creative act, a moment of genuine presence, a time you felt truly seen. What was present in that moment? What your achievements don't usually provide? Name it specifically. Okay? So the third question, last, when did you last feel genuinely fulfilled? Question number 4, what would you do? How would you spend your time if external approval, financial reward, and social recognition were completely removed from this equation? This is getting tougher, isn't it? But I want you to answer. You have to be honest to yourself. You're not going to show these answers to me, but it is for you. As it, you can call it as a self reflection, an audit. You do it to yourself. So, what would you do and how would you spend your time if these external approval, financial reward, or social recognition was completely out of this equation? Now, the answer that comes before the logical mind intervenes, that answer is the thread back to your intrinsic self. Pull it and follow it. Write it exactly as it arrived. No editing or scribbling, please. Be honest. Question 5. What would you allow yourself to want if you were no longer trying to be enough for anyone else? Again, what would you allow yourself to want if you were no longer trying to be enough for anyone else? This is another deepest question. Sit it with the longest. Because the answer to this question is not a goal, it is a direction. And living in that direction, even imperfectly, even slowly, even alongside all of your existing responsibilities, is what fulfillment actually feels like. Now, let me tell you, whatever you wrote is not something like, self-help exercise. It will be a real map for you to look at. Again, many people will have that logical interventions, and that is absolutely okay because you won't succeed in just doing in one attempt. Like, you can't do it immediately in today's attempt. There will be some logical intervention, which is obvious. However, this map that I'm talking about, map of wherever you have been running, why the running hasn't filled you, and where the thing you have actually been looking for has been waiting all along. Keep it, come back to it, and let it breathe. Let it gradually, grow. Don't stop that. Okay? And if you feel comfortable, you can share any one word that felt immediately after this exercise, if you are comfortable. And with this, I want to take a moment before I say anything else because what happened in this session today, the questions you answered, the feelings that surfaced, the honesty that came through, that is not nothing. I know even if you have written nothing in this chat, I know it takes courage to do that. However, I'm glad that you did. Sharing is not required. You do it for yourself. So, as we know that most high achievers go their entire lives without ever stopping long enough to ask these questions. And they just keep on asking the wrong question that, okay, why I'm not, happy or feeling that enough. Because the achievement treadmill doesn't give you space to do that. It don't stop. And you stopped here. You sat with the discomfort of looking at all you have built and asking honestly whether it is filling you. That takes more courage than any achievement on your list. So here is what I know for watching, people stay on the treadmill. The next 5 years will bring more achievements, more milestones, more external evidence of your capability. And if the internal work doesn't happen, the feeling underneath will not change. The treadmill moves whether you choose it or not. The only question is whether you are running it or it is running you. Mind it. Like that boy didn't stop winning, he stopped running from losing. And the moment he made that shift, chess gave him back what it had always been meant to give him. Not a shelf of trophies, but a Sunday morning feeling with his dad. So let me also share this with you that I do work with one-on-one coaching program designed specifically for people who need this. People who are not looking for motivation or accountability or a better morning routine. People who need someone to help them understand at the deepest neurological and identity level why the thing they thought would fill them hasn't and what will. So, as I said, there are a lot of ways to do it, and the sooner or the earlier we do, save us from a lot of years lost into all of this mess. So there are multiple ways. Which one of the way I'm talking, which is science backed again, that is DMIT profiling, which gives your innate motivational wiring to understand what intrinsically drives you, not just what you have been conditioned to pursue. We work with the emotional patterns, your identity or architecture. That is only possible that when we connect one on one, we understand, we share, and there we start connecting better, and we rebuild carefully, completely, with every tool that is needed, so that it can help you to believe that you have a life that is not just impressive but genuinely deeply felt. So if today anything that resonated with you or something that hit you hard, or say something that you have been living for a while but you couldn't say or drop it in the chat, that's okay. Don't pressurize yourself. So now just recall that story that I just shared of that boy, and ending about that Sunday morning feeling with his dad is something that you recognize similar pattern with something else, something you have been quietly been missing. You can send me or connect me with the link that is shared in the description. Okay, so probably we can talk through, we can understand, and in that discovery call, probably we will have a safe discussion. All the discussion that we have is strictly confidential, so you can be rest assured. Just a conversation about what your next chapter looks like when you stop building a resume and start building a life out of it. So tomorrow is day 27, the second Probably we are left with 4 more days. Everything we have built this week comes together in the final sessions. Show up. What coming is worth everything you have invested in this journey. So, thank you so much for joining in today. I'm really glad you all made it. And you have done the most important thing. You looked honestly at yourself, and that is more than enough. And that has always been enough. All right. So, thank you so much and see you tomorrow. Bye for now.